So recently, Hulk Hogan has been on the opposite of a redemption tour. It's been an interesting summer for the Hulkster. I'd say that it can be boiled down to three events. His appearance at the Republican convention, his odd comments regarding Kamala Harris whilst imitating Steve Austin, and his recent appearance on Logan Paul's podcast where he's talked about the forgiving nature of wrestling fans in a rather inappropriate manner. It's not like he already had a lot of goodwill built up with the wrestling fans, as he's known for twisting the truth and straight-up fabricating stories, seemingly to bolster his own self-importance. He's also been mentioned many times in shoot interviews as a backstage politician, that the man you'd see on screen and the man he was off-screen were so far removed from each other that they were unrecognizable. First off, to cover the political stuff without diving too deep, I thought his appearance at the RNC was pretty light-hearted and funny, and given the fact that their party had recently had that dark day in American democracy, Hulk was arguably the perfect guy for that crowd and demographic to have some light-hearted fun and move past the scary situation that had occurred. I have literally no dog in the fight when it comes to American politics, but I'm trying to think about this as objectively as I can, and basing it on a 30-second clip I saw of Hulk's speech there. It was a little wild, and I'm sure there are some who weren't impressed at all, but it was the least offensive moment of his summer. Next, he gets on stage hammered, starts ripping off Stone Cold Steve Austin's promo delivery, and makes what many considered to be an insensitive and bigoted comment bringing up the race of Kamala Harris. It's hard for me to necessarily understand these issues that are much more ingrained in American culture than my own old blighty across the pond, but there's a lot of people who saw this as beyond the pale. It's one thing to go up and tear off your shirt and say Trumpomania or whatever. It's another thing to get on the stage drunk and start talking about somebody's race whilst pretending to be Steve Austin. To do that publicly, given Hogan's previous controversies, is vindicating the people who had already given up on him and alienating people who had continued to be fans. Then finally, he appears on Logan Paul's podcast and tells Logan about the forgiving nature of wrestling fans. As Logan sat looking slightly uncomfortable, Hulk Hogan gives Chris Benoit as an example. He claims that the fans forgive Chris Benoit. There are some who will find that horrifically offensive, because in large part, the wrestling fans do not forgive Chris Benoit at all for the horrific events that took place. However, there are some, including a very vocal subsection of the wrestling online community, that do want to talk more about Chris. This ranges from people who want to talk about him as an in-ring talent in spite of what happened, through to people who reference the CTE as why Chris can't be held entirely to blame, through to people who have downright nonsensical conspiracy theories explaining why he didn't do it. Most of the wrestling community and fanbase at large, however, appear to express uncomplicated condemnation of Chris Benoit. Notice how this is an extremely complex and nuanced thing to bring up. It's not at all something that Hulk Hogan should say so matter-of-factly to try and clear his own name. Hulk has basically said, "I may be bad, but I didn't commit the most horrific atrocity out of all the locker room." It brings about a broader question, though. Do wrestling fans forgive Hulk Hogan? I can't speak for all wrestling fans, but what I can do is offer my take on the situation as somebody who watched Hulk Hogan wrestle in person as a kid. TNA Maximum Impact Tour or whatever it was, they come to the UK, and Hogan teamed with Sting for what would turn out to be his last week of wrestling matches. If I'm being honest, despite the fact that Hogan has had the controversies he's had, etc., I'm still glad I got to see Hulk Hogan wrestle live, even though he was an older and slower Hogan. Is that forgiving him? No, but he's tied to a great childhood memory. I also think Hulk is a celebrity from a different era of celebrity which doesn't excuse his actions, but provides a little bit of reason to it. He doesn't come from an era of celebrities being so sanitized as they are in the current landscape. I am also still sympathetic to the personal losses and difficulties Hogan has been met with in his life, which are absolutely soul-shattering, no matter who you are. The hardships he went through are also a lot more difficult to deal with when you're in the public eye as much as he was. In reality, I wish Hulk Hogan had just doubled down on kayfabe in some sense. Most of his tall tales that he attempts to deliver with sincerity would actually make for hilarious content if he was in character. Like if he was claiming that Andre the Giant weighed 1,200 pounds and he shoulder pressed him out of the ring with one hand. With his promo delivery, it would actually be hilarious. I don't particularly like what Hulk Hogan's done and said at times, but he's nevertheless a huge part of wrestling history. I don't think it's necessarily on me to decide whether he's forgiven by the court of public opinion, but my own opinion is that he's a bit of a doofus. Sometimes he doesn't realize what's an inappropriate thing to say the least. I'm also aware that his comments about Kamala Harris aren't the first time he's brought up race, and that for many people his previous comments about race have been enough to turn fans away, which is completely understandable, as the things he said were indeed laden with vulgarity, even if they were said in the throes of addiction. Anyway, that's basically a rundown of the predicament Hogan finds himself in. He also revealed he's currently signed to a deal with WWE, the details of which seem to be about licensing and merchandising from what Hogan said. So, that's pretty vague, I guess. Do you want to see Hogan as an ambassador for the WWE? Let me know. I've been Sarcastic Mark. Thanks for watching.